Good evening. I'm Kelly Wright. Thanks for joining me as we spend the next hour together. You know it, I'm always hoping that you're safe and well, taking care of yourself and your family because you matter. My opening observations tonight, do the right thing. Dr. Martin Luther King once stated this, and I'll read it for you. He states, cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right? And there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe nor politic nor popular, but one must take it because one's conscience tells one that it is right. Dr. King also added this, the ultimate measure of a person is not where they stand in moments of conscience, but where they stand in moments of challenge, moments of great crisis and controversy. And certainly, as we look around the political landscape and the racial landscape of America in the midst of a COVID-19 pandemic, we are definitely beset by moments of challenge, moments of great crisis and controversy. And there are two men running for an election to win the right to lead this country through moments of challenge, moments of great crisis and controversy. The question is, which of these men, Joe Biden or President Donald Trump, is willing to take a stand to do the right thing? That, my friends, is something you will have to decide when you vote. So the urgent message of now is to vote for the person you believe will do the right thing in moments of challenge, moments of great crisis and controversy. Do it for the right reasons. Do the right thing. And those are my opening observations. So welcome to the program. There's a lot to discuss today, and I want to do something very special about tonight's program. I want to focus on the power of the Black vote, particularly coming from Black women. The 6th annual Black Women's Roundtable report is out from Essence, and it's the power of the sister vote and the poll results from that BWR Essence survey, the Black Women's Roundtable Essence survey. And we're going to get into what really is significant and impactful and important to Black women today. So joining me now to discuss this is Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeaver, Dr. Elsie Scott, and Melanie Campbell. Ladies, thank you for joining me tonight. This is a very important topic because of the power of the Black woman's vote. Dr. Avis and I, back in February, when this show first launched, we had a discussion about what we're discussing today. And that's the fact that we believe and still hold true to the fact that the Black woman's vote this election season is pivotal. Dr. Avis, tell me about this Black Women's Roundtable Essence discussion and the survey that's been released.
Oh, we're so super excited. Under the leadership of Melanie Campbell, the convener of the Black Women's Roundtable, we've been able to have a partnership with Essence Magazine over the course of the past 6 years to develop this poll that specifically examines Black women's election and civic participation experience and ideas around what's most important to us in our communities. And we're super excited to, at this particular very pivotal election, be able to release the reports or the results of our 6th annual survey that shows us where Black women stand right now on the issues and what are going to be their deciding factors come November 3rd on Election Day.
Melanie, tell me, if you will, what the 2020 key findings have revealed about Black women and their concerns going into this election day.
Well, for the past 3 years, and thank you, Kelly, for the invitation.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Number one issue, again, for the past 3 years, racism and rise in hate crimes. Still number one. Number two, criminal justice and policing reform. No surprise, right? Issues that are about survival, safety, very, very high on the list. Concern about our democracy, right? Corruption in government, our voting rights being under attack. And so at the end, and affordable health care, and because of COVID-19, that's another major concern for Black women, right? And so the things that are happening day to day, and for the last, we've done this poll for 6 years. Avis, and I want to thank Dr. Avis and Dr. Elsie for leading on the research for us with Black Women's Roundtable. So we've got some of the best and the baddest sisters that are working this poll, and of course Essence Magazine for continuing to be our media partner for the past 6 years. For those first 3 years, it was during the Obama era, and so you see the shift in it, having looked at it for 6 years, to see that they were more aspirational, right? In those first 3 years, thinking about college affordability and things like that, to where for 3 years now we're looking at the concern around racism and hate crimes because it's more overt.
We're going to take a break. We're going to come back and continue to talk about this important dialogue and this important subject matter, the power of the sister vote, and how Black women are voting, not who they're voting for, but how they're getting out en masse to actually make their voices heard like never before. I'm talking to some great women to talk about this and break this down for us as we draw closer, just 20 days away now from the presidential election. We'll be back with more in a moment. Welcome back to the program. We're talking about the power of the sister vote. And this is a stunning thing for all of us to realize, that Black women are not playing around. They are showing up at the polls. And I'm talking to three magnificent people who are on the cutting edge, on the forefront of gauging what's going on. They've been partnering with Essence Magazine to reveal the findings of what's happening within the psyche and the minds of Black women, not just older and middle Black women, but Generation Z, the younger, from young to old, they're looking at it and addressing it. So joining me is Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeaver, Dr. Elsie Scott, and Melanie Campbell. And you know, what's happening right now, we know that Senator Kamala Harris has galvanized a lot of support from women of color. Is that enough, though, given the landscape of the fact that we're not monolithic in our voting? Some of us vote Republican, some of us vote Democrat, and some of us vote independently. What do you think are the core issues as Black women go out to the polls, in all likelihood, who they'll be voting for?
Right. You know, Black women, although I think for many of us, seeing a reflection of ourselves on this ticket and at the precipice of the highest realms of power in the nation is very exciting and is very motivating. The bottom line is that Black women vote based on issues. Black women are very pragmatic voters. And we actually asked about which issues were most important to Black women. And they were especially likely to say that they are looking for a ticket that will address systemic racism. They are looking for a ticket that has a plan around police reform. They are looking for a ticket that has a plan about how we're going to address this coronavirus scourge that we know is ravaging our community disproportionately. So obviously, I think many of us are excited about Kamala Harris, proud of her, want to see her as the Vice President of the United States. But at the end of the day, we are voting for issues that we know matters to our families and to our communities. And that's what's going to make over 95% of us, as through this poll, are saying that we're actually going to show up and vote on Election Day. We are planning to be there to make sure that our voices are heard.
Absolutely understandable. And while we're talking about Senator Kamala Harris, the vice presidential nominee on the Democratic ticket, we should also extend our prayers and support for one of her staffers who has tested positive for COVID-19, and she's currently off the campaign trail because of that, although she had a distant relationship with that particular COVID person, so she hasn't been in contact with him. But nevertheless, that is cause for concern, Melanie and Dr. Elsie Scott, because look, when you look at the situation, this current president, has been sending out mixed messages all along. And now that he's gone through COVID and his family going through COVID, his wife and his youngest son all testing positive, and now they're in the clear. But the bottom line is he's still out there and he's still talking about COVID-19 in ways that dispute the science. And you know, as well as everyone who's been following this, that Black Americans are disproportionately impacted by this coronavirus. So based upon your survey and your findings with Essence, what is your message to the President of the United States about his mixed messaging and handling this COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, I'm recovering from for having tested positive for COVID-19 myself. I had a whole rough month in September, and developed pneumonia, and a lot of the things that the president was taking, I took. I didn't get the stuff that it was brand new, that had never been tested. As far as some of the
also didn't have a helicopter to fly you to the best hospital.
Yeah, right. And but I did drive myself to the hospital. So trust and believe, that doesn't mean you're not sick, right?
Yeah.
Some people say, "Oh, I drove myself to." Anyway, I digress. But at the end of the day, it's a serious thing, and he needs to either stop talking, and I know that's kind of crude, but stop talking about it if you're not going to be about the solution, because it's a life and death situation. And so when you have people who follow you and you tell them untruths, basically lies about this situation that we've been in really all year, because at the end of the day, he knew back, the beginning of the year about this, people are losing their lives. 100 and I think it was last I looked was 214, something like that.
It's now right? About 215.
14,000 individuals, human beings, families who have been destroyed in some cases, because you have people who've lost multiple people inside of their families. I'm blessed. I have good health care, right? Me and my nephew who lives with me, both of us caught it. We both were blessed to survive. And know that I had access and support that not everyone gets. So I'm privileged, right? When I look at it, I'm not privileged like the president, but I know I got extra health paid attention to based on having more access. And so all those folks who get sent home, who don't get that treatment, they're going home to fend for themselves. And so for the president of the United States, the highest most powerful position in the world, to continue to do what he's doing, I say he's morally bankrupt, because I've lived it. I'm living it. I may look, I hope I look cute, right? Dressed, but guess what? I'm a walker, and I can barely walk 2 blocks, and I'm a walker. I walk 3, 4, 5 miles. That was my exercise of choice. I can't do that. My lungs were damaged. I don't know what the future will hold for my health care. I've never been sick, but guess what? It hit me. And so the reality of knowing that, and knowing that I was outside at a family gathering for a funeral, and it hit me. So having things at the White House, on the lawn, having rallies, it is to me, and this is, I'm saying for Melanie Campbell, I think it's criminal. Because you're affecting people's lives, and people will get sick, and unfortunately there will be people who die.
We'll be back with more after this. Dr. Elsie Scott, this is why Black women are saying enough's enough. We're going to vote in record numbers, and we're seeing that unfold today as we've seen early voting turnout shattering records, even in places like Texas. But the concerns that Black women have also in this survey with Essence is about the voter suppression and trying to suppress the vote, because we know that in Harris County, Texas, only one ballot box or election box is available to the hundreds of thousands of people who are now standing in line to make sure their vote is registered and counted. What do you think is going on here?
That's a good question. And voter suppression has been one of the issues that the Black Women's Roundtable, as well as the National Coalition on Black Civic Participation, has been engaged with over a number of years. But every time we think we have identified all the different methods of voter suppression, they come up with another genie out of the hat. And this year, it's amazing because, as you mentioned, Harris County, Texas, the fact that they would put only one drop box in the whole county, as big as Harris County is. Also, the fact that that they're not concerned, we're in a pandemic year, and so therefore you really should be looking out for the welfare of your voters. But so many states have stopped some of the early voting period, and the fact that we are having courts, the courts are upholding some of these voter suppression activities. And so this is where elections have consequences, because as you look over the last 4 years that Senator McConnell had sat on President Obama's nominees for a whole year. And so at the time that President Trump became president, there were over 100 judgeships that were open, and more have come available. And they have, they talk raising questions about packing the courts. The courts have been packed. And so that's one of the things that's driving Black people to the polls. They are seeing that, elections do have consequences. And that the fact, I know when I was a child, my father was fighting for the right to vote for Black people. And he says, you look at the reason why he wanted to vote, he said, they're trying so hard to keep me from voting. So it must be something to that voting. And I think that's what a lot of Black people are looking at now. Why are they trying to put all these roadblocks in my way? So I'm going to stay out there for 10 hours in that line. I'm going to drive across town to the only drop box that's in my county. So, it's going to be interesting. That's the other thing, that'll be coming out of as we look at what happens with election day, is we'll be looking at voter suppression, and we'll be working with other groups, like the Lawyers Committee, the Legal Defense Fund, that are tracking this, and have lawyers throughout the country that are tracking all these different suppression methods.
And if I could just say, things like that, having to stand in line for 10 hours to register your vote is another form of poll taxes.
Right.
I mean, because you have to think about who can afford to potentially miss a day of work in order to vote. That there are monetary consequences to this, and they know that, which is why they're doing it. Having one drop box in an entire county is a form of poll taxes. You have to be able to have the transportation to get to where that drop box is. It is unconscionable what's happening across this nation. And then in California, not necessarily a swing state perhaps, but still in California, you had the Republican Party got caught creating a completely fake drop box, trying to trick people to put their votes in a box that was illegitimate, where certainly the plan was just to throw those votes away. And so Dr. Elsie is exactly right. Every year they come up with new, creative, and more egregious ways to try to steal our votes away from us. But it is, in fact, encouraging to see that Black people all across this nation are rising up and saying, we don't care what you do, we're going to make sure that we register our votes.
Exactly. Speaking of that, we'll return and we'll talk about one of the things that Malcolm X used to say about Black women in terms of how they should be treated, but how they're not treated. This is a very powerful discussion we're having tonight with three powerful and inspiring and aspiring Black women. The message, of course, is from the Black Women's Review with Essence Magazine. We're coming back with more, and we're going to talk about another important matter to them, and that's criminal justice reform and police reform. That's next. It was Malcolm X who said the most disrespected person in America is the Black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the Black woman. The most neglected person in America is the Black woman. Has that changed?
I thought Melanie was going to jump on that one.
No, I defer to you, Dr. Elsie.
No, I don't think it has changed. When we look at the fact that it took a long time for people to address the fact that Black women were being beaten by police, that Black women were being killed in criminal justice situations. So I think that it took a long time for people to start calling Breonna Taylor's name and Sandra Bland. So we could just go down the line that there are more and more Black women that are being disrespected by the system. And so that's one thing by having Black women having started the Black Lives Movement, Black women leading a lot of these protest movements now, it's placing more of an emphasis on the problem of women. Let me just say that one of the things that I think the good things, that one of the few good things that has come out of the pandemic has been that people were locked up in their houses. And when George Floyd was killed, a lot of people saw that. And so many young white people saw that. And they started understanding what were Black women and Black men talking about when we were talking about this systematic racism and why there's a need for police reform. So I think it has helped to galvanize, especially young people. But the sad thing is we still have government officials that still don't believe in systemic racism. And during the debates, the vice presidential debates, our vice president said that he didn't believe that there's systemic racism. And there are so many others that are saying that. You have Senator Graham, Lindsey Graham, saying that he wants Black people who are conservative to vote for him. And because you need this in society. So, it has been a difficult year for Black people, for Black women and men. And that's the reason why we got the response we got on this survey about criminal justice reform being one of our top issues, because it has not stopped. Every time you think, you go back to, I can go all the way back to McDuffie in Miami, Florida, back in the 80s, to Rodney King, that nothing has changed, it seems. It's gotten worse because we have police officers with cameras now. And we would think that now that we have these cameras, that they would not engage in some of this misconduct.
And that is why you're here, and that is why the Black Women's Roundtable with Essence magazine is so important, and it has to be information that gets out 20 days away from the election. When we return, we'll talk about the younger generation and what you anticipate they will do, because they're not voting in the same way that many of us vote, but yet they're getting out the vote, but they have differences of opinions. We'll talk about that next. And we're back discussing the Black Women's Roundtable, which was done in association with Essence Magazine, and some great findings from 2020, the key findings that have been going on, we've been discussing. Look, Black women are very concerned about what's going on in America. They want to help save America from itself and from the enemies within. And that's the darkness of our thinking sometimes, where we think in liberal and conservative terms or black and white terms, or young and old terms. So ladies, to our younger generation, we've seen them rise up, stand up, and have they been willing to listen to the sage advice and wisdom of older women who have been through the test of time? And what do you think we should be hearing, older Black Americans, what should we be looking for and finding in the younger sisters about the power of their thought process and how they view what's going on, and what motivates them to vote?
Well, I work at Howard University, so I get a chance to see some of these up and coming young leaders. And they don't necessarily want us telling them what to do and how to do it. So we have to be gently and tell them about what our experiences are and say, well, how do you see that fit in with how you see you should do it in the 21st century? So, but I see a new activism on the part of the students at Howard. Of course, Howard has a whole history of student activism, but you find a lot of these young people, they are so interested in being engaged. And now that we are not meeting in person, we are having a virtual university. I met one young lady, they've created an app to try to get their fellow classmates registered to vote. And so they are putting their information, they got their emails and they're sending out messages. Did you get registered? Have you voted? And do you need the information on what your state is doing? So I see this new activism on the part of young people. And I think Avis can talk a little bit more about what we saw in the difference between Gen Z and the millennials, because so many people have been talking about the millennials. Now the Gen Z people say, wait a minute, we are the people you should be listening to. So Avis, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's really very interesting because in our poll, we actually asked a question about which political party do you think best, in essence, represents your interest, comes closest to representing your interest, or and what we found was there was a great variation across the age groupings, specifically as it relates to those who mentioned that the Democratic Party was the party that they would choose. Obviously, with Black women, as you expect, the majority of them did mention the Democratic Party, but it was still huge variations between the proportion who said that for those who were the senior women versus those who were in millennial and Gen Z education age grouping. So for example, over 80% of those women who were 55 or above said the Democratic Party. Around 73% of those who were what we call middle-aged mentioned that. But when we got down to the millennials and the Gen Zs, it was 58% for millennials, 60% for Gen Zs. Those two younger demographics were much more likely to say either no party at all or independence. So it was very interesting how, I think the Democratic Party, first of all, needs to understand that there's something going on generationally within their historically most loyal voting bloc, Black women. And they need to understand that if they want to continue to rely on what some people would call the backbone of the party, they need to be able to understand how to also reach out and meet the needs of younger Black women. One last thing I will say that I thought was particularly interesting, though, is if you compare what's going on with Gen Zs and millennials, I found that it was interesting that really from every angle that you looked at it, millennials were more likely to lean more towards saying that they were interested in the Democratic Party as the best venue to sort of move forward their interest than millennials. And it made me think, if you think about what's really happened recently, Gen Zs have really taken the front with regards to issues around gun reform. And so they've been out in the streets on those issues, and not only in the streets, but they've been putting a lot of political pressure on elected officials to actually pass laws around that, right, in states across this nation. And so, it could be, and this is obviously worth some more research, but it could be that Gen Zs might have a different attitude about the best way to bring about change as compared to millennials. It could be that Gen Zs are more likely to say we really need to make those changes legislatively, probably even more importantly than through protest. And maybe millennials are more likely to say, no, the best way to do it is through getting in the streets and making your voice heard. So to me, this opens up the door for perhaps even further research to figure out what's going on among those youngest demographics in our voting population.
Ladies, this is a powerful survey with Essence Magazine, the Black Women's Roundtable, and I appreciate you doing this for all these years and continue on to do it. And I think to your point earlier, we need to bring men into the topic as well, because we've got to make sure that Black men are becoming just as politically active as our women are. But thank you for this topic. Thank you for this subject, and thank you for taking the time out to bring this to the program today. I appreciate each and every one of you, and God bless you for the good work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
All right, we'll be back with more after this. Welcome back to the program. I always like to have inspiring and motivational people who know how to encourage everybody, even in the midst of the pandemic, the racial division, the political divisions that we go through. So I thought I would bring on this next guest, who is an incredible woman doing some great things. Her name is Joanna Leblanc. She is a national security law expert, works in U.S. foreign relations. She's a speaker, a TV analyst, and by the way, she is named one of the most influential people of African descent in politics and governance under the age of 40. Joanna, welcome to the program. Good to have you.
Thank you so much for having me on, Kelly.
You know, there are a myriad of things that we can talk about, but I wanted to talk about one of the things that's most near and dear to you, and that's bringing unity to the African diaspora. Tell me about that, please.
Yeah, thank you for asking that a great question. As you said, I am a foreign policy expert. I love the world. I'm an internationalist. But I think that when it comes to the Black community, we are, first and foremost, we are everywhere. Black folks are in Asia, they are in Europe, they are in the Caribbean, obviously the African continent, they are in the Middle East, and here in the United States. But there seems to be a disconnect between the diaspora living here in the United States and Black folks around the world. I can tell you this firsthand as an immigrant. I'm originally from the Republic of Haiti, came to the United States at the age of 9. And even as a child, I saw the disconnect between Haitians and African Americans. In fact, I remember growing up, there were fights after school due to xenophobia. And can you believe it? And I remember asking myself, why is there a difference between myself and my fellow African American classmates? Because I came from a country where I was not told that I was Black. I only knew myself as a girl. So coming to America, I was told that you're actually Black and African American, and you have to conduct yourself as such. So for the first time in my life, I was provided with a different meaning of who I am as a person. But what I can tell you is that whether you are in the US, in Asia, the Caribbean, and anywhere else, the issues impacting people of African descent are inherently the same. And the sooner that we unite, the faster and the easier it would be to make progress, and more specifically, to elevate the Black race.
That is so important. And for anyone who has traveled outside of the United States, if they've grown up in America and they've traveled to other countries, to see that Black people live all around the world, just as you said, even in Ukraine and Russia and Turkey. I mean, we're everywhere. And everywhere we go, there is the influence that we carry with us. And it's an influence that can greatly inspire others. So how do we bridge this divide that we have between Black Americans and Africans from other parts of the world, and just, you know, people from the Caribbean as well? Because there is a difference in how one views himself. Friends of mine from Haiti and Barbados and the islands, they see themselves as being very successful. And sometimes I think, and I could be wrong, but sometimes I think here in America, we have seen so much in terms of racial hostilities that we continue to think in a way that we're not all together yet.
No, I think you're correct, and I can tell you, there are Black folks in Iran. In fact, there's a woman who is doing incredible work, and she too was named one of the most influential people of African descent. And she did a story highlighting the oppressive system that exists when it comes to Black Iranians. And honestly, I didn't know there were Black folks in Iran. But like I said earlier, I think that first it starts with education. Because I can tell you, as someone who attended schools, who attended failing schools, K through 12, I can say this, the education I was provided, in particular, Black history, the system failed me miserably. So I think that we need to restructure, there needs to be a reform around our curriculum. In particular, when it comes to history, Black history, to ensure that it incorporates Black people of African descent globally. And so first, I think education. And two, I think there has to be a genuine interest for us to interact with each other, because what you will see is that a lot of immigrant communities are secluded. Immigrants come to America and they form their own communities, they have their own shopping centers. So the genuine connection often does not exist. I mean, perhaps in the workplace, you're forced, you have to go to work to make a living, right? And even you go to the church, you will see that churches are very segregated when it comes to Black people from different parts of the world. So there needs to be a genuine interest for us to connect with each other and for us to understand, yes, you are different. You have a different culture, but at the end of the day, we are inherently the same people. And if we unite, we can reach a better future for our children and so forth.
Welcome back to the program. Having a very informative and insightful discussion with national security law expert and one of the most influential political people on the planet right now, and she's under 40, Joanna Leblanc. She joins me right now. And, you know, we were talking in the previous segment about how Black Americans and Africans and Caribbean, people from the African diaspora, we don't always come together as we should, and yet there's so much that we have that's positive and so it's so enriching to see Africans and Caribbeans and Black Americans from all over the world coming together, and anyone like yourself who's experienced that, it's just so refreshing.
Absolutely, and I can tell you, I've traveled to many countries across the African continent, and I've lived in several. And as I walked down the streets of, let's say, Accra, Ghana, or Lagos, Nigeria, or Lesotho, I could see the people. I could see myself in the people. And I can see some of my classmates from school who look just like them. I can see some of my coworkers. So we are not that different. And you will, if you understand the continent, if you have traveled there, you will look at yourself and identify with a certain region within the continent and even a certain country. And obviously, we know about the slave trade from Ghana, Cape Coast, Ghana, and so forth. So we are originally from the motherland, right? But I think it's an experience that we each, as a person of African descent, must have to go and explore. And in the midst of the conversation around race relations in America, I've heard commentary about the notion of some folks wanting to move to the African continent as a way to escape white supremacy in America. And what I can tell you is that wherever you are in the world, there is oppression and there is instability. Yeah. Because the dominant group always want to maintain and retain power. So whether you are, so in the United States, our concern may be race relations, right? But in other parts of the world, it may show up as xenophobia. It may show up as tribal. It may show up as classism, as gender. So oppression exists. So leaving America to go to another continent as a way to avoid some of the systemic oppression that exists here in America is not the solution to me. The solution is we must stay here and work together to make the system better for all of us. A system where, regardless of your race, socioeconomic status, or gender, we could fulfill the American dream.
And so how do we do that? You're engaged in some programs to do just that and accomplish it.
So I once served as a commissioner here in the District of Columbia, where I advised the Bauer administration on how to handle domestic policies impacting people of African descent. So a lot of the work that we did was identifying what the challenges were, because again, Black immigrants and African Americans, while the challenges are essentially the same, but because of cultural differences, you may have to approach those challenges a little bit differently. So a lot of it was advising the administration on how to handle those challenges. And also, as I served on an executive board with the former African Union ambassador to the United States, where one of the things that we're doing is really connecting the African diaspora and obviously African Americans with the motherland through economic opportunities, by traveling to the African continent and so on. So for me, unity within the Black race is incredibly important to me, because I want my children to have a better, when I do have them, to have a better and brighter future. And that can be done through unity within the Black race.
Joanna Leblanc, appreciate you. Don't be a stranger to this program. In fact, you got to come back on more often. And when we have a lot of issues to discuss, we'll count on you to bring some solution to it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on.
We're coming back with my final word after the break. And welcome back. I want to thank all of my guests who appeared on tonight's program. And I always want to thank each and every one of you for taking time out to watch. I appreciate you. And remember, you matter. Hopefully tonight we've been righted, ignited, and united to not spread fear or hatred or violence, but to spread love, freedom, and peace. Good night.
If you don't feel it now, just wait. It's coming on, the love train. Just give it time, give it time. Get on board. That means you, and you, get on board.